On this episode of China Uncensored, mainland China encroaches on Hong Kong. Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. Today's episode is a follow-up to yesterday's Hong Kong and mainland China, one country, two systems. People in Hong Kong enjoy greater freedoms and liberties than their neighbors in mainland China, but the Chinese regime has been gradually trying to erode those freedoms, turning Hong Kong into a seething hotbed of political dissent. Now, you wouldn't guess it, but this video would result in a 3,000-person strong protest against Hong Kong police and a battle between pro-Beijing and pro-democracy forces in Hong Kong. That woman cursing at Hong Kong police is primary school teacher Lam Wai-tzu. It appeared online on July 22nd, and Lam was immediately accosted by a flood of criticism from pro-Beijing papers, and her school received an avalanche of complaints. Ironically, this was at the same time Lam was being named one of the outstanding teachers of 2013. Over the next several days, in a very Cultural Revolution-esque manner, pro-Beijing newspapers slammed her, banners attacking her and demanding her dismissal were strung up along the walls of her school, and funeral wreaths with her name written on them were discovered nearby. Doesn't that seem like a surprisingly strong reaction for a woman shouting at police? That's because Lam stumbled on something much bigger than she probably intended. During the smear campaign against her, another Hong Kong netizen uploaded a more complete video of the incident, and suddenly we see this rabbit hole goes much deeper. This is what was happening on the other side of the barrier that Lam and her husband wanted to get through. That man, dressed like a doctor, is a Falun Gong practitioner, part of a demonstration against the Chinese regime's forced organ harvesting of his fellow practitioners in the mainland. The Chinese regime has waged a bloody genocide against Falun Gong within its borders, but in Hong Kong, with its greater freedoms, Falun Gong is protected. Supposedly. But those guys dragging a banner through the demonstration are members of the Hong Kong Youth Care Association. For over a year, the group, widely believed to be backed by Beijing, has harassed Falun Gong practitioners in Hong Kong, including once threatening them with a butcher's knife, a case Hong Kong police refused to investigate, and allegedly even attacking Hong Kong residents who tried to defend the group. In this new video, it's revealed that police not only allowed the harassment, but also blockaded the area so pedestrians couldn't get in. There's Lam again. This time you get a different picture of what happened. And suddenly, Lam wasn't a crazy woman cursing at police, but a defender of Hong Kong, criticizing police inaction and the Chinese Communist Party's incursion on basic freedoms in the city. Then it came out that the Youth Care Association has its office right next to Lam's school, and people started connecting the dots between the association and the origin of those creepy banners and funeral wreaths. And that's why this Sunday, 3,000 angry residents, some pro-Beijing, some pro-democracy, took to the streets in a half-day standoff that devolved into an open brawl at one point. Hong Kong is a powder keg, and an explosion has been building for a long time. Polls taken by the South China Morning Post earlier this year showed that 90% of respondents would rather return to British rule than stay under the Communist Party's thumb. And there are a lot of reasons for that. To access Hong Kong's freedoms, better living standards, and education, mainland women have flocked to Hong Kong to give birth, so their children get resident status. In 2011, almost half of all babies born in Hong Kong belonged to mainland mothers, putting a huge burden on Hong Kong hospitals. Then, Hong Kong moms also found that they were running out of baby formula. Huge amounts are being smuggled across to mainland China because they're considered safer than products there. It got so bad, Hong Kong implemented limitations on the amount of baby formula you could take out of the city. Only 2 tins, or about 4 pounds. Violators face fines of almost $65,000 and up to 2 years in jail. Then there's a fight for real estate. According to research by Nomura, Japan's largest consulting and IT firm, in 2011, mainland Chinese bought a third of all residential flats in Hong Kong. Not only did this push out local buyers, since 2009, home prices have risen by as much as 70%. Then there's also thinly veiled attempts to educate Hong Kong kids to love the communist regime. It was a proposed mandatory class called Moral and National Education that taught such things like the Chinese Communist Party was progressive, selfless, and united, and that multi-party democracy was destroying the West, while conveniently leaving out things like the Tiananmen Square massacre. It was pushed forward by Hong Kong chief executive and pro-Beijing politician Leung Chun-ying. You can see the kind of respect students have for him.
水爆啊！
More massive protests brought an end to the mandatory 3-year implementation of the moral and national education. Speaking of Hong Kong's chief executive, they don't get to vote for him. The chief executive is chosen by 120 business leaders and influential citizens, mostly with close ties to Beijing. Now, originally, China said Hong Kong would eventually have universal suffrage and that the people of Hong Kong would get to decide when. The Hong Kong people said 2007 to 2008. Their government said 2012 at the latest. And so China said, actually, you guys don't get to decide. No universal suffrage before 2012. Oh, hey, look, it's 2013 and still no universal suffrage. Okay, 2017 is when Hong Kong will have universal suffrage. Maybe. That could be one of the reasons why in 2012, for the 15-year anniversary of Hong Kong's return to Chinese control and the inauguration of our friend Leung Chun-ying, tens of thousands of protesters erupted out onto the streets. It also doesn't help that when Hong Kongers express frustration and anger, you get guys like Peking University professor Kong Qingdong calling them bastard thieves and dogs, suggesting they quit speaking Cantonese and learn proper Chinese, Mandarin. By the way, Cantonese is actually closer to ancient Chinese than Mandarin. So now you know more about what's going on in Hong Kong. What do you think the future holds? Will Hong Kong eventually gain greater autonomy? Comment below or check out China Uncensored Facebook or Twitter. And as always, be sure to check back again next week for more new episodes of China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching.